Joining me now, you know her well, the host of the Carol Markowitz Show and columnist for the New York Post. That's right, it is Carol Markowitz. Carol, thanks so much for joining me here on the program tonight. Got to start with some of this news out of California, where Governor Gavin Newsom this week had an amazing interview with the New York Times, where he not only talked about trans rights, but trans kids. And in a way, I think this may just wind up being the first campaign ad of the 2028 season. Have a look at this.
We didn't get into trans sports. That's an issue no one wants to hear about because 80% of the people listening disagree with my position on this. But it comes from my heart, not just my head. It wasn't a political evolution.
Your position being that?
I don't think it's I want to see trans kids. I have a trans godson. There's no governor that's signed more pro-trans legislation than I have.
Carol, after everything we know about this issue, going out there and saying, I want to see trans kids, this doesn't seem like he's on the right side of that 80-20 divide.
Yeah, and he's been trying to walk it back, his far left ideas, for a very long time. So it's actually interesting to see him jump right back into them. If you recall, the first episode of his podcast was with Charlie Kirk, and he said to Charlie that he largely agreed with Charlie on the trans issue, especially where sports are concerned, that it's not fair and all the rest of it. And he seemed like he was heading back from the edge of the cliff that the Democrats had found themselves on. But now he's leaning right back into it. He realized he has a primary he has to win first before he can go on to the general. And he's decided that he's going to go back to the safe far left positions that he feels he's, needs to have in order to win that.
Hey, Carol, that's a really interesting point you make there about the primaries. Is this an indicator that the Democrat Party has now shifted so permanently so far to the left that to win that nomination, you have got to take some pretty extreme positions before you can even start to talk about tacking back to the center and presenting a more moderate view of Democrat politics, that old school vision of Democrat politics that was probably more pro-American and pro-normal middle class, start to take that against Donald Trump?
Well, exactly. I mean, all the energy in the Democratic Party is on the far left. It's coming from places like Mamdani and AOC. It's not coming from people like Kamala Harris, who herself is pretty far left. I mean, she wanted, the famous Trump ad was that she wanted to pay for sex changes for felons, for inmates. That's pretty far left on its own, but she's a moderate compared to the Mamdanis and the AOCs. So the idea that Gavin Newsom is going to tack that far left and then head back to the center for the general, I'm not sure it works out the way that he thinks. And I really don't see Americans lining up with this philosophy of his.
No, and I agree with you there on that, Carol. And yet at the same time, it seems like despite having, one term of Trump before and then another year or so and a big cultural swing back to normality on so many things, we keep seeing stories about this. To stay around this topic, I saw a story today where a child had been withdrawn from their school in Washington State after a teacher who identified as non-binary formally requested not to have that child in their class because of their parents' political beliefs. Does this mean that a conservative teacher could say, hey, I don't want that Libs kid in my classroom? Talk me through this.
Yeah, my kids are in big trouble, I'm sure, if that's the norm that we're going to be going for here. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy thing to do. And that's where the Democratic Party is. They are in a crazy, crazy place. Now, does that mean that they can never win ever again? Of course not. And you could see it in the different races that we've had in America in the last few months. The Virginia governor's race, the New Jersey governor's race. We just had a mayor of Miami flip to Democrats. The Democrats are energized to come out and vote in a way the Republicans just aren't. So even with their crazy ideas and all of that, Democrats do have a chance. So I don't think that it's smart for Republicans to dismiss it like, oh, nobody's ever going to vote for these lunatics. People may, and you really have to get out and vote and stop that.
Hey, very quickly, Carol, I want to just get your reaction to this, though. Bill Maher, he has come good, it seems, in some ways. Look at this exchange he had with his pro-Palestinian guest, Anna Kasparian, where he left her speechless after asking what Middle Eastern city she might be able to live in, getting around the way she likes to in the West. Have a look at this.
Where would you live? What city would you live in?
Well,
Where do you think you'd be
sure-
comfortable in that dress?
I'm sure it would not be comfortable in this dress in any of the various Middle Eastern countries that have been destabilized by
You're not
the United
really,
States.
you're not really blaming it on Whitey.
Carol, I don't know, despite her protestations, I think she was blaming Whitey. What do you reckon?
Yeah, the destabilizing, it's America's fault, everything's America's fault. That's a very familiar argument from the left. And I think that they use that for, basically everything. How come Cuba's communism hasn't worked out? Well, America's, destabilized them and that kind of thing. It's a very just typical old argument. He got her. He absolutely got her. He lured her into the trap, and she was stuck in it because she knows that the only place that she could go and wear that dress cities in Israel. And that's really what that was all about. Scott Jennings of CNN did a similar thing in a panel recently where somebody was complaining about, the Islamic republics in the Middle East. And he got them to admit that Israel was the only place where you could have free speech and you could be yourself in the Middle East. So I love to see this. These people need to be called on their ridiculous opinions. And, I think Bill Maher did a great job.
I agree 100%. You love to see it. Carol Markowitz, thanks so much for joining me. And everybody, check out the
James.
Carol Markowitz Show.